is, how does our food system impact our climate? And that's everything along from production to distribution to consumption, into food waste. And I think, maybe Alex, since he was just speaking about food waste, would you want to start us off?
Sure. I think it's a very, very big question to try to wrestle to the ground on that one. But the reality is, food is one of the biggest factors in how we deal with our climate. If we go back a very short time in human history, we grew our own food, we had our own cattle, we did our own hunting, we did our own fishing. All of those pieces were part of the human experience, and we have somehow, in a very rapid time, almost completely divorced ourselves from the historical way of living. And so that can cause problems when change comes that rapidly, and I think it has disconnected us from food. And so we need to really think about how we can reestablish that connection. So if, like Greater Village, we're growing food, so we grow $20,000 worth of food each year to give right to clients. We pick it, we walk it across the yard, and we put it in a food hamper, and it goes to the client. We could buy that same food. It could have been grown in Chile, or it could have been grown in Mexico, or it could have been grown in California and shipped all over the world. Well, we know that one way of growing that is minimally impactful to the climate and one isn't. But we do it all the time. We don't even think about the impact of picking up a product that the grocery store has from an overall consumption standpoint when it comes to fuel and human resources costs and all those sorts of things. So I think that the deeper we get into thinking about food actively and not just consuming it, not just being consumers of food, but connected to our food like we used to be, the better we'll be.
No, I believe it is around 20, is it methane 21 times worse than CO2? I think that the effect of the food waste is quite staggering actually in comparison with all because we think about the production and all that stuff at the front end, but it's actually what happens to the food at the end that creates a fair amount of damage as well.
And the stats behind how much food we waste are staggering. I read a report, 4.5 million pounds in Atlantic Canada of food waste per year. That's not some long running total. 4.5 million pounds per year. And I went, what? Food banks are struggling to keep enough good food in people's hands, and we're wasting 4.5. We just like, oh shoot, we don't have the workers to harvest it, so we'll just plow it into the ground. It's like, we just invested the resources to create it. How can we then turn around and invest more resources to waste it? If we're gonna create something, surely we can take enough care of it to get it to the people who need it. That would be a wiser investment than plowing it into the ground or throwing it in a landfill or whatever.
Anyone else like to jump in?
I think there's a direct relationship between the food and the environment, particularly climate change. But what I think is, per se, it is not the process of growing food that is contributing too much to climate change. Because of the so-called modernity that we are so much used to with the one type of food. We want to have oranges 365 days. We wanted to have beans all the seasons, and we have forgotten to live, as per the natural cycles. We are supposed to be, in sync with the phenological cycles of plants. So that's what we have forgotten to live, and then we are in problem because it is not the growing of plants that is contributing, but we can just think about the plant that is grown in Mexico reaching to Canada. How does it reach here? And then it is there in the store. We cozily drive our car and go there. instead, why not we start a small backyard farming? We could do that even in the, that's what I feel, what I think. And this may seem a very insignificant contribution, but over 7 billion people, if every individual grows a single plant, then how much we could contribute. That's what I think. And that may sound a very small effort, but collectively we could do a lot, I think. Yes.
Well, let's start with soils. Woody Harrelson, the actor, he's an influencer because of his star status, has been involved with the making of 2 films, Kiss the Ground and Common Ground. I don't know if anybody's watched them yet. And he explains how the current practice of continually tilling the soils, applying fertilizers, herbicides, insecticides, is killing the microbiome in the soil, leaving them less fertile, less resistant. And he was saying by doing this practice, it just basically becomes dirt and chemicals. And he stressed the need for regenerative farming to handle the shocks that are coming from climate change. We were just on a webinar with David Suzuki, and he was saying in Canada last year, 70% of the country was in drought. 5% of our boreal forest burned. Canada, the top 13 cities in the world with the worst air quality,
Because of forest.
we're all Canadian.
Yeah.
So we're in a mess. So regenerative farming will help repair the lands, because he was saying if we don't do that, we have 60 years left of arable soil left on the planet. That's it, 60 years, and our food systems will crash. So what he's doing is amazing. That's what we need to be doing, is regenerative farming and changing the way we're producing our food. It leaves it, better able to handle droughts and the climate change that's happening.
So I guess my thoughts are very similar to what the two of you were saying in terms of what we consume in our diet these days. I'm assuming most people in here, I'm 35 years old, and I grew up on meat and potatoes and carrots and turnips in the winter. We were not getting salad. If we were getting salad, it was a broccoli salad in the middle of winter. There was no way we were getting lettuce. But with the climate change, I've seen the climate change a lot, but I've also seen what we consume change a lot, right? So, that food waste, is the food waste a lot of lettuce that's going back because it's only good on the shelf for 7 to 14 days? Is it, I'm guessing it's not a squash that's going bad. It could be going back because nobody squash. But I feel it's what we eat. And it's not really a nice thing to say, but our, there's a lot of people who aren't able to eat the way that a lot of people eat. A lot of people eat a very luxurious, middle class diet. And I think that diet itself is really bad for our climate. If we were eating more what you're talking about, eating beans in the middle of winter, dried beans, eating squash, I think those, I think it'd be a lot better for our climate. And if we're even talking about the stuff coming up from Mexico or from California, I know that researchers will say that there's a scalability argument to be made. So if we were to go ahead and make a backyard garden, they're gonna say a backyard garden actually produces more greenhouse gases because of the scalability. It doesn't really make much sense, but whenever you're going ahead and making raised boxes and things like this, they calculate those numbers in there. But they don't usually include the numbers of what's being lost in transit. So if something's ending up into food waste, it's not being included. And also, in New Brunswick, we don't even compost. So even if it was being included, it's not regional for here. But with all these studies that argue the system of scalability, there's nothing that ever looks at that seasonal eating. So if we were to eat seasonally, it's just gonna be a drastic change, and nothing really analyzes that. So I think, like what you're saying, like seasonality is really important, and education is really important, but it's really hard because, like, we're all kind of brainwashed by our, like, agricultural industry. Like, they want us to eat, you know, what they're putting on the shelf. Like, it looks really good in those fancy plastic bags with, like, the salad dressing ready for you. Like, we're all strapped for time. So it's really hard, but I think it's something we have to change, just like in general, and I'm not really sure how to do it, but it would be really cool to see us do it, so.
There's a lot of stuff on the internet on how to preserve food, like tonight, you know, there's never a meal that goes by that we aren't eating something from the garden all year. So, and we foraged, you know, I'm probably the only person that loves to see the dandelions come up on my lawn, because we use every bit of it. Or stinging nettles, the most nutritious plants on the planet. Or next week, it looks like our hostas are gonna be up, delicious, if you like hostas. So,
Can you elaborate on that? Pastas are delicious? Tell me all about
if
it.
you like butter lettuce and asparagus, you're gonna like hostas.
Oh,
They're a
they're my
delicacy in Japan.
favorite.
Yeah, I can't keep her out of the hosta pan. You know, when they're first coming out of the ground before the leaves come out, you cut them off, you fry them in a bit of butter and water, and they're just like asparagus.
I am gobsmacked.
That's why deer go for them first, you know. And then in the fall, when the flowers come out, they go in the flowers are excellent in your salads. We don't really have anything on our property that we can't eat.
Pastas are traditional Japanese food, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they make special sauces to put on them, and, yeah.
Delicacy.
And you can actually eat the leaves when they first come out, and like spinach, you can steam them, and they're an amazing, healthy.
And they
food
grow
source.
back, you just cut them
Yeah, you
down.
cut them off, they grow back,
Grow back.
so.
That's what actually, when I came to Canada first, because back home, I used to study a lot about wild edible plants. And I have recorded that and published in papers. When I came here, I was, wherever I go in Walmart, Victory Meat Market, anywhere, I was trying to, looking out for something that is wildly grown, like a wild banana flower. There are so many things, we in Himalayas we harvest from the wild, and here I couldn't see. And then one day I was talking to one of the professors who teaches on this NTFP, non-timber root forest product, and he showed me the list of plants that we could eat. But he was telling that unfortunately these plants are not in highlight. There is no concerted effort for different reasons, you were saying. So perhaps if we look carefully in and around, there are a lot of plants, that we could replace those tropical plants having traveled all the way to our food plates. That's what I think.